Good evening. I'm Cameron Ayler, and today I'm going to be discussing food banks and why they might not be the solution we need. We have food banks and we have food to give, yet people in our communities are still going hungry. Food banks have two damaging effects. Number one, in the video, Why Food Won't Solve the Problem of Hunger, the speaker talks about how food bank users are some of the unhealthiest people in our communities, with many of them struggling from diabetes. That's because even though people might be receiving food from food banks, they're not receiving healthy food. They're usually getting the highly processed leftovers from corporations that are donating. Processed foods are also the cheapest calories, so if food banks are purchasing food to feed a large number of people with a fixed budget, these cheap calories make the most sense to keep people alive, even if it doesn't keep them healthy. Damaging effect number two, they impact the mental health of those using the food banks. In the video, Help the Hungry, Shut Down All Food Banks, it goes into great detail on the psychological harm food banks cause. Food banks are very stigmatizing for those that need to use the food banks and are often looked down upon. As a society, we basically have two main pathways for food. Either you buy it, or you're given it at a food bank. And as soon as you go to pick up food from a food bank, everyone knows that you're struggling for money, and you begin to believe that you're lesser than everyone else. Not only are food banks stigmatizing, but they also don't provide those using them with any choice in what they eat. This, along with stigmatization, can crush someone's self-esteem. Not being able to go into a regular store and purchase the food you want, like anyone else, is effectively taking away their right to be happy and healthy. So if food banks aren't the solution, then what is? I agree with the video, Shut Down All Food Banks, in that people should be able to buy their own food and not need to rely on charity to get their food. I also agree with the video, Why Food Won't Solve Hunger, in that hunger is due to poverty, not a lack of food. So the perfect solution would be one in which people are provided with the money to buy their own healthy food without making them feel inadequate, and a solution that encourages the help of the public without making it feel like a charity. This plan is somewhat easy to implement with a system like Food for Friends, the one in the video Shut Down All Food Banks, where people are asked for a small donation when they're purchasing their groceries, which goes onto cards for those that need to buy food. However, this can only work for so many people. Unhealthy foods are cheap and healthy foods are expensive, so if given the choice on this limited card system, people would still choose the unhealthy option in order to have enough food to eat. If the cards couldn't be used to purchase unhealthy food, then we solve one problem, but we create another, because we're taking away choice, and now all that's left is the more expensive healthy foods. Now the amount of food you can buy with the card goes down because the food you're buying is more expensive, and this will only escalate as more and more people use the service and less money goes on to each individual card. This is where the government needs to step in. Right now, the crops for processed foods are subsidized by the government and therefore can be sold for very, very cheap. Now, if instead of subsidizing those unhealthy processed foods, we were subsidizing the healthy unprocessed foods, then people would be persuaded towards buying that healthy food because it'll be at a lower cost than the unhealthy food. This means we can then remove that restriction of not being able to purchase unhealthy foods because people will be persuaded towards buying healthy foods. And this brings back choice, which was one of the things that food banks take away. So as you can see, finding a better solution for food banks will take time and interest from both the government and the public. No one chooses to be in poverty and require the use of a food bank. So try to make a change in the system today, because you could be the one using it tomorrow. Good night.